Perfect. Okay. Welcome. I'm super excited because I have a very special person sitting in front of me. We're connected from Peru, and it's Silva Ballón. We have gotten to know each other in Cusco. We probably will talk more about Cusco, the Andes. I'm super excited. And first of all, I want to say welcome, Silva, to the podcast.
Thank you, Kim. I really appreciate that, and thank you again for that. And happy to be with you and share what I know, share my place, my history, my background with you and all you people,
Listening right now.
Yes.
Um, I would like to give a little bit background for the people who are listening. And I want to say at that point a little background story. We get to know each other through Kumari, which is a tourism agency, amongst a lot of more things. We will talk about it in a couple of minutes. And also, Silva is working in the gastronomic sector. He has his own restaurant, so he also, which is a very important topic for Peruvians, knows a lot about Peruvian food. And for me today, I would like you to tell us a little bit more about like going really back. Imagine a little bit your childhood. How did you grow up?
Um, well, I grew up a bit west of Cusco City, actually.
Mhm.
I grew up in a small town called Chuquibambilla. So it must be around 10,000 people, something like that, maybe now more. And so it's a town that lives a lot from farming and animal, ranching. And so most of people speak, or majority speak Spanish, but also I would say like 30-40% or so speak also Quechua, right? And the Quechua speakers are both, with the Spanish too. So um, I think it was good for me now that I work in tourism because of that background, that experience of my childhood now helps me a lot to understand um, majority of history, if I can compare with the conquest or the real context, politics and economics nowadays. And so that gives me a better perspective, right? When I have to speak up from one um, perspective, which is the Andean side, right? And so let's say if I have to speak about history or food or organic things, circular economy, right? It's much easier for me because I grew up in that kind of environment. So I
Mhm.
can speak up like how really is to work land with ancestral tools, for instance, or certain kind of techniques or bite indicators like still people do use in order to match, planting with a forecast, for, let's say, for rainy season, right? If the wind comes from the west, from the east, it will rain. It will not rain. So, right? So when is the best time, for instance, for planting a crop, a corn? And at what elevation? Where are you, at a valley, up in a plateau, on top of a mountain? So when is the best time to do it? So there's a bunch of things. So definitely now it helps me a lot. There's all this background and plus all the studies then in the university because I have studied tourism and then by myself also got into ecology because I did work in the Amazon and it's a wonderful, wonderful world, the Amazon, and I think every single component in the ecosystem knows its role, right? The only one that doesn't know its role is us.
Mhm.
what is our role really in this planet, I mean, talking, from deeply, feeling. Um, Most of us are trying to do the best, but most of people don't know, you know. And
It's
clearly we
yeah.
have that in our forest, deforestation, illegal mining, people don't care about um environment, weather, garbage, etc. Right? So yeah, and all these things, I think it took me to create a sort of personal project with local communities because in my job as a guide too and showing up, the culture in the Andes to different travelers from different nationalities. And it was opportunity also for me to get in contact with local people, native people, and the most important for me, to keep practicing my Quechua, because like any language, if you don't practice, you just forget it. And so that gave me an opportunity and also an interest into learning more, right? Because the Quechua I did learn, unfortunately, it's about, I would say 50%, right? And the other 50 is Spanish. So it's like Spanglish, but this is we call Quechua. A lot of Spanish words were incorporated into Quechua and it is managed that way. And then when you ask the real word, what that really means, people say, I don't know, but it's like that. Of course it is not. That's a Spanish word, right?
Mhm.
People already forgot or the word just got lost. So, but there are some other areas where are more remote and people still speak some of these words and for me it's learning too. Learning from language side, but also learning from I would say living, side too. Because there are a lot of aspects like if you watch carefully and then you ask yourself how these people could survive for such a long time with not much money, right? With not much technology. So then it really is not that point, about surviving or thriving really, of humanity. It's another an important um, factor, I would say, which is the social thing. How
Mhm.
close up we can be with other people and how mm, truthful we can be with honest with the rest of our people in our community. So community I think is one of the biggest things. If you create a community with a lot of these values, and I think it's powerful and you can and and that's what I see. That's what I see, that how these people, right, even they don't have a lot of technology, I would say, like we have in the cities. Um, they even just as a source of food and all this stuff, these people just made it great because there's one thing, they help each other. They are honest with each other, right? When they help each other, when they work, and they do use an old system called ayni, which they help each other, a reciprocity or reciprocal system. And yeah, and they share, it's I think after time, I've realized also like the fact that well, I have to talk maybe a little bit about history. In ancient times and before, there was no money, right? I mean, monetary system. There was no money per se, like the concept of money really. So anything done, right, and as a big project or personal or helping each other, it was done with it under different context value, right? Because if you help someone, that person really treats you under different context, like that person can pay you.
Mhm.
Let's say you pay me. Since then, I said, okay, you gotta do because I'm paying you. But if you don't pay me, I'm helping you, right? Maybe your behavior will be different. You said, oh, you are helping me, so I need to be more kind. Maybe I need to provide food, the drinks, because that favor you're gonna give me back one day, maybe in a week, maybe in a month. So when you come back to me, right? Whatever I'm gonna be maybe doing an planting season, harvesting season, or building a house. So whatever, but I would like you work nice. You feel nice working in my place.
Mm.
Since then, I'm not gonna say just, hey, I did help you, so you work. Remember, I did work well, nice, and you gotta be work also the same. No, it's very um it's in our instinct, I guess, right? So if you're treated nicely, you also gonna do the same and the other. So
Mm.
um
And that's ayni.
yes, that's I think what one of the things that make still survive a lot of these people, right? And in the community villages. And we're so lucky actually in the mountains that we still can see this kind of interaction, this kind of societies, um,
So
in,
how
in,
does it
in, in the
fit?
whole context, the culture itself.
Just a moment. I wanted to step in a lot of things, but let's stay there for now for to the ayni because you really
Oh,
took us already super, super deep.
mhm,
But I also want to share this podcast if, for example, someone had never been to Peru. So to kind of also get a little bit an idea. The one thing you mentioned, which was the ancient tools. That is something I really would love to dive a little bit deeper into in the sense of how much also you were just talking about ayni, about the give and take without money. So someone, for example, needs help in the fields, the neighbors are helping, and next time it is your fields that need help, and then you go and they come and help you. But for example, what from the times of, I mean, if it's the times of the Incas, still things when you compare, for example, the life in Cusco, or when you also see foreigners coming and you guide them as groups, and then you see, for example, values lived still in the mountains, and also yeah, ancient maybe traditions. So could you share a little bit more about the ancient traditions that are still, besides ayni, also alive, and where you, or what in when you observe that, where you see, you already mentioned some, the part of the community, how they interact with each other, the honesty, um, but they are also based on a foundation of a culture. And can you take us a little bit more back? Doesn't have to be like a deep dive into Incan history, but what are traditions that are still nowadays alive?
well, in terms of traditions, I think there are quite a few. Well, perhaps not 100% original, but it got like syncretized or mixed, right? We have, that most of Peru is Catholic in terms of religion. So even the Catholicism we have is not 100% Catholic, like Roman Catholic, because it got syncretized with Andean religion or Andean philosophy. So there are a bunch of like indicators, I would say, or variables that are that don't belong to Christianism, right? But people, because practice, right, and they mixed together, and at the end just became just one a practice.
Mhm.
And people are Catholic, but still practice some Andean traditions, like they contract the shaman, like on August, for blessing the house, because August is meant to be the month of the Mother Earth. So families, even our Catholics, they contract the shaman, and the shaman does all the ceremony, right, for prosperity, abundance, protection, right, as it was in the old times. And it does a little offering with a lot of ingredients. They burn that. The smoke is important that goes all around the house, right? Every time it's growing, but it's in a way, um, it's more freedom also,
Mhm.
even in the society, right? To practice whichever religion or philosophy you want. It's not like in the, I don't know, 2 centuries ago, 3 centuries ago. If it wasn't the same institution, the church, that might judge you, it was the society that,
Mm-hmm.
usually, judge you and said what you're doing is not allowed or is not proper, right? So that's one of those things. Um, I think another big thing which is coming back, I mean, it's coming back in a way like it's getting influence into city people, I would say, educated people, right? Which is this connection with the ancient philosophy of religion, right? If something that survived from ancient times in terms of those, I'm going to talk religion and philosophy, is this connection with and respect, right, to Apus and Mother Earth.
The Apus are the mountains.
Yes. And
But I
Apus, yes, Apu is a mountain deity, right? And every single town, city, back in pre-Hispanic times, had their tutelar protectors, which were those Apus, APU, right? And Mother Earth is Pachamama. So everything horizontal is Pachamama and vertical is Apu. So it's interesting, for example, in the countryside, that there's no activity to start, right? Whether it's farming, building houses, making fences, or whatever, without doing and even the simple and smallest ceremony. Okay. And in this ceremony, it's vital, it's important, the ingredient, or the coca leaves as an ingredient. It can mean anything, but not coca leaves. Okay. So, and people too, again, very simple, can be very elaborated. But what they do is be grateful with the Apus, these mountain protectors, deities, okay? And also with the Mother Earth. The drink, for example, uh, people, whoever is leading this, and then the rest has to follow the same. Just pour the fingers in the cup, and then spill to mountain A, mountain B, because every of these apples, has a name. So let's say mountain A, right? Thank you for this day. Yes. Mountain or Apu Pachatuzak, we have here one. Okay. Or Apu Salkantai, Apu Alsangate. Thank you. Thank you for this day. Protect us, right? Thank you for everything you give us. You make that all this production, is abundant. Thank you for that. So this is metaphoric, right? A little bit of this drink to you, right? To all of them. And then for the Mother Earth. So it's a bit like it's what you give us, we have to share with you, right? And I guess it's kind of cultural. Then it just became a trend since very old times. Like when we drink any alcoholic drinks, even non-alcoholic drinks, we just say cheers, salute. Right before a drink, we pour a little bit to the ground.
I know, also in restaurants that happens.
Yes, even if you don't really a lot in a restaurant or a bar, at least you put your fingers in just a couple of oh, I forgot for the Pachamama, yes. Yeah. That's another of the practices that we have still in the Andes. And my appreciation is that it's coming back even in big cities, This this the topic about getting back into nature connections, right? I think it's getting back also in societies like in Lima, because social media and different other sources, is feeding up. It's again showing up this kind of practices and trends. I would say it really is a trend, but a philosophy, right? Um,
It's a lot about also when you talk about that, it's this living with nature in a way that it's cyclical, like respecting that there's a cycle. You were also talking about planting the crops, having, of course, the specific month, but it's really in sync because they are still much more connected to nature with what is happening also around them, and then including her in whatever practices they have. Would you still say it is so conscious nowadays, or is it also changing? You said on one hand, the practices are coming back. Um, yeah, is it still, is
mhm.
the, yeah.
I think it's coming back, but also it's getting fused also,
Mhm.
because um, let's say there's an area called Sacred Valley. There's a lot of people, um, which kind of like hippie style, right? But they take part of this Andean philosophy and mix with other philosophies and are creating kind of movements, right? And plus, uh, the use of certain ingredients, I would say, like or herbs or ayahuasca, for instance, these hallucinogenic, plants. And it's becoming huge also. There's like a sort of retreat centers too, which it's it's part of it, right?
Mm.
Because I don't know, 20 years ago, barely you could hear someone, I mean, at least in my experience with foreigners, um, about ayahuasca, for instance. Barely. Now it's very popular. At least, 6 of 10 travelers that I I met them, they had heard about ayahuasca,
But does it
right?
make you sad? I mean, when you hear that and you're like, I mean, because yeah, you were talking about Pisak, and I also found a lot of times when I talk to these specific kind of travelers that they don't really engage with the culture. Like I wouldn't say everybody, you can never generalize, but I feel like that's also this part when cultural appropriation comes in. As you said, it's now getting more popular. People are coming maybe to do their Vachuma or their ayahuasca retreat. Um, but how much is there then this space of really getting to know Peru as a whole and also understanding the culture? Like I think I was saying in another podcast interview as well, what I feel is to really start to understand the culture. I wouldn't even say that I got until today what really being Quechua hablante as a speaker really means, in the sense like I don't think you can ever be included if you don't speak the language in the way that you profoundly really understand, and engaging on level of yeah, for example, also participating when there's like these little places where you can have your chicha. For everyone who's listening right now, this is like a maize beer, and then there's like
Hmm.
a mama, a mama, an old woman who is like who prepared it the whole day, and then people are sitting there, and it happened to me often that I came into these places in these chicherias, and I mean, they were speaking and I didn't understand, but I would have loved to, because I think then you really understand. So what are they talking about? Like, well, how is their world
Yeah.
going on, you know?
Yeah. I guess this thing about ayahuasca, wachuma, and all those, it's I guess it's good and bad because you know, as we are in a social, in a globalized, you know, world. Of course, there are like retreat centers that might take seriously and get incorporated culture, not just what itself is per se, you know, the practice of this rituals, right? But also might connect with other things, right? Like other tours or getting immersed in some community villages or, you know, local practices and local people, a local culture in general. But other ones, like in different other areas too, they take more commercially, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's more about just to make money.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like we say, right? They are really and true shamans. And those guys, they never said, oh, my service is this much.
Mm-hmm.
At the end, when you say how much, they will say, is your volunteer.
Mm-hmm. That's wow,
You
that's
can,
an interesting topic because yeah,
yes,
I think
because
especially being here right now in Berlin and seeing this scene of I don't know, so many people call themselves a shaman, or so many people, I don't know, have read something about cacao or whatever, and then being in these so-called ceremonies. And it has these, I think it's a two-bladed knife in some ways. It's also something that I feel happened to yoga, but now we're talking about a plant. We are talking about something that has also, as you said, a huge effect. And
yeah,
for me, I feel like, as you said, I mean, becoming a shaman in Peru, how does it, I mean, take us for a moment when we talk about a shaman from the Andes. How do you become a shaman in Peru if it really is the old traditional way?
look, what I know, I had the opportunity to meet one, but don't really know much, you know, deep details or the whole process. But in general, they are like chosen ones,
Mhm.
right? Not necessarily it passes from father or mother to, you know, son or daughter, which by the way can be both male, female, and but also can be anyone in the community village. You know,
Mhm.
it's the old tales. It says the good shamans, right, were altomisa or you know pacos. They were touched by the thunderlight.
By
So
whom?
by thunderlight,
Yeah. Mm.
they were caught or touched, but somehow they didn't die, and they must have fainted, right? But then they just woke up and they got the power then later. And also said that uh, the people that had certain malformation, you know, physically, also those were the ones, like the ones had clear palates, right? Um, but every time are less of those ones, you know,
Mm.
the real ones. I still remember one. Uh, this happened when I was probably 2 or 3, but my mom told me that my grandpa was, you know, in his 30s and he was almost to die.
Mhm.
It must have been one of those diseases that, you know, was internal, you know, a wind or something respiratory, you know, problems. So, but he was coughing a lot of blood,
Mhm.
and he was in bed. And the older brother and the older son, older brother of my grandpa and the older son of my grandpa, just made a journey about a day and a half, and they brought all this one of this, you know, in my town is called Agos or Alto Misa, which is Alto Misa is more Spanish name.
How do
And
you say it in Quechua?
Aco,
Ako.
A,
Ta,
Aco,
ta, ako,
A,
ta. There you get
A.
an idea of Quechua already. It's
Yeah.
wow, it's
The
quite a
Quechua is more glottal, you know. It's not pa, no, ah.
ta.
It's
Uh,
make like a little ah. Ah,
Ah, so they
ah,
brought him.
yes, and he said that everybody should get out
Mhm.
and only ask um my grandma and my mother and another relative stay inside. And it just make it close. I mean, all the houses, it should be as dark as possible, right? And my mom just refers that she or he started to talk in not a Quechua, neither Spanish, a different language or something like that. But it seems he was talking with someone, right? And he started to hear like whispering, those kind of sounds. And suddenly she hear like something landed, flapping wings. And then after this talking in a weird language, but not really words, more like little sounds. And then it finished. It sounds like this bird, took off. And then he said, okay, you can now open the door and stuff. And he just walked around the house and said in one of the corners, this is the place. You need to dig out this place. And then it was dig out that place and was found a bull, of bronze.
Mhm.
And that was from the very old, ancestors. That is that that one was an Illa. Illa is a sort of a statue, right? Representing, in this case, was a bull, so representing the cattle. And in the old times,
Is it?
it was a statue. How could I describe this? Uh, it's a little statue representing the animals, right? So I can do offerings okay, through this to the gods, right? And they can send me the offerings. Let's say an offering you've seen, right, with the shaman.
Mhm.
So if you see a little like llamas, or if you see little figurines,
Mhm.
statues of a man, of a woman, it's like representing humans, right?
Mhm.
And through these little statues and figurines, right? Because you cannot place a man and a woman in that little table of ceremony, right? So a representation of that is this Illa.
Okay.
So as the same, you can take a whole cattle, right, into that little ceremony. You
Mhm.
just do a replica, a ceremony, right? And it can be in a stone, it can be in pottery, it can be in a metal, but you just place male, female, right? Because there's another thing also like about the duality, right? In the Andes. So that was an Iya, And according the shaman said, oh, the Iya, it was eating the heart of your grandpa. I mean, of your father, said to my mom, right? And then he said, well, you have to take this Iya and this other different, ingredients, blah, 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 and gave an instruction, and it has to be taken to certain place. And that place was one of the apples.
Mhm.
And then my uncles just took to that place and did exactly. And after that, my grandpa could live still close to its 80s or over 80s, I
Wow.
think. So, you can call like, all right, it is a coincidence or whatever, right? But there's one thing like sometimes we don't consider, right? In the pre-Hispanic times, um, a lot of the elements in nature were alive entities.
Mhm.
So when I talk about Apus, Apu is an alive entity.
Mhm.
So as a human, I'm not just, isolated. I'm interconnected with these Apus,
Mhm.
connected, rooted to the ground, to the trees, to the water, to everything. My guess is just maybe with what we call modernization, we just lost that connection. we just broke that connection, right? So, but the elders, in a way, they had that, you know. And that's another thing also that I always discuss with a friend, you know. God is one thing, right? And whatever God you want, you know, person can believe, but a faith is different.
God and faith, yeah.
Okay. And people can have a faith into a mountain. I know people that, you know, but it's kind of like mixed with Catholic, but they have an incredible faith to certain, you know, sanctuaries, to certain apus, and they talk about like they gotta, you know, like what is called miracles. Like what in Catholicism people can talk, oh, that Madonna or that patron saint made me a miracle. But well, that's why you can have a faith into rock, into tree. Certainly, it's going to happen incredible things. And no doubt that the ancestors, you know, had a faith also in these deities. Recently, I've heard something. Well, the conquistadors then, with their religion and stuff, when they came, they call, you know, to the natives that they had as multiple gods, and they revered to their multiple gods. But this guy said they just um, um, gave a tribute, retribution, you right, to the power of nature, right, and to these alive entities, whether it can be as a grateful, you know, respect also, but respect of that because it was that powerful or can get sent, I don't know, bad things, you know, it could send some sort of plagues or diseases, etc. Right? But
I think
it's interesting, you know, the context stuff to understand about the elders in a way.
I was, you know what I was thinking is it's so interesting that in modern societies we separate the human is so separate from actually the nature. And in that, in the moment, I mean, even if I think about, I mean, I think everyone in the Andes has also this feeling of like the apos are protectores, they are protectors, they are there, there's a majestic way how they are showing up, and it's this to know, wow, I also I receive from it. So I feel in this way, for example, to really start praying again, or giving offerings to, for example, trees, places we are at, rivers, for example. That's another thing which I feel so interesting, because we we dump in so many ways into the rivers all kinds of stuff, and we are not only aware that it's life-giving, but the other day I was thinking, wow, without the rivers, you know, so often they stream towards the ocean, and they give us the possibility to have fresh waters. And it's, I mean, it's also the flow of life, and we are the ones who not only stop the flow of life. I mean, there's so many, it's interesting, in Germany I think most rivers were straightened, instead of like, you have, if you give it the natural flow, and you have a flood, it doesn't flood so hard. But if you start to straighten rivers, then at some point in a natural way, especially when there's too much rain, they take their natural way again. And we have done that so much in Europe, and it comes back to us. And also understanding that she, as Mother Nature, has so much more power than us. We think as humans so many times, I think also it's the Catholic belief system in many ways, that we are somehow God, or there's this entity, as you said, that is like this person, this one thing that is God. But it's, if you see in everything God around you, especially in Mother Nature, then you connect totally different to whatever you do in daily life, up to the point whether you buy your vegetables, etc. So yeah, I just I wanted to step in that part, but you were saying something really beautiful in the end. You were saying that like this fascination of a Paco, of someone who Paco, that there is, yeah, that there is a connection to or there are the miracles, as you said, but there are in some ways, I don't know if this is true, but I want to know what you say to that. In some ways, or in many ways, when the Spanish came, they took also a lot of the things they observed from the locals, and they just integrated it back into however practices they were using and doing. And so, like, for example, putting a little church in front of the Apu because they were seeing, praying to the Apus, but then they kind of replaced it. How is it nowadays?
I think nowadays it's all integrated. It's integrated because don't forget that you know, what is called evangelizing process. It's basically it's a change mind, right?
Mhm.
And if you work in a long time, so after 2 generations, you completely will succeed
Okay. How
if
is that?
there's no resistance from the other side, right? So
What do you mean by that?
um, because a lot of the practices back in Incan times, right, were changed by the Catholic practices.
Mhm.
But nowadays, as a result, the people, a lot of people, they don't know why is that.
Mhm.
I'll place an example. You know, every May, beginning of May, first, second, third, is celebrated the festivity of the Catholic crosses, right? But look, in this Catholic cross, the cross, because every town has a cross,
Mhm.
whether it's in the middle or in the nearest mountain hill, right? Or in on top of an apple. It's a Catholic, I mean Christian cross. You know what? The locals, these 3 days, its whole process, It's the entrance, the main day, and then the final, right? And in all this, somebody, takes responsibility of this celebration. And it has to be food, and it has to be drinks, and it has to be dance. And we call Cruz Belacqui. Belai is like stay up all night, right? Doing chants, praying, but also drinking, dancing. And
Mhm.
people drink alcohol, so and it stays around.
Mhm.
Tell me if in somewhere in, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but if in Europe or Italy, from where it comes, really is practiced that way. And the cross is dressed up like a person. Again, this a cross is a word. Come on, or can be a medal. From a Western perspective, it's just a material. But from an Andean side, it's an alive entity. So it gets cold. Let's put up some clothes. Let's ornate,
Mhm.
right? So it's interesting, the perceptions. And in May marked in the pre-Hispanic times, mark the coldest or the beginning of the coldest,
Mhm.
right? And it's related with the Southern Cross. So in
Mhm.
May, by those days, this is where the Southern Cross shows at its, best on the sky. And it marks the coldest days. So it was a festival.
Mhm.
And in the evangelizing process, when the Catholics came, of course, this practice was not a proper. Let's do something. And then people, when you ask, is that a lot of people, they don't know. They just take it as a sort of faith and stuff, etc. Right? Um, another one is Saint James, right?
Mm-hmm.
And his white horse. He celebrated in July, but July was the month of the El Rayo Illapa, the lightning bolt,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it was used different pieces, right, in order just to overlap, and then made the people practice. And after a couple of generations, people just forgot about the real meaning. And
Mm-hmm.
people nowadays take it as it is Catholic, but not it has its origin. It's the way back and the reason why it's celebrated on that month,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's what I'm saying. Like, you know, evangelization process is like um adoctrination, right?
Mm-hmm.
And changing minds. And you just need a couple of generations and just gone, right?
But do you think they still do it? I mean, is there still a little conscious behind it? Because you know what I was thinking is, I mean, imagine this scenario. Um, Having started from my grandmother, she would have, for example, had a certain ritual for trees, or whenever she went to a market to cannot even think about something specific, or when she picks strawberries, she does a certain thing to give thanks back, and she gave it to my mom, and she gave it to me, and this is just, it's natural, it's in there. Is it the thought of, do you really think profoundly that there's still this feeling of like I'm giving back, or did it become a festival in some ways, a celebration, but as you said, there's not so much consciousness anymore?
Um,
When do you think it's even
from
important?
perspective, from perspective of if it can be called religious aspect or faith, right? Spiritual context. Yeah, there is always like, this reciprocity. And for instance, like the people or the family, they organize this, right? They are doing just with the aim in order to get the favor, receive, get blessed. That's what also they are giving, organizing this whole celebration for this patron saint, for this Catholic cross, for this um tutelar protector of city, which can be a Madonna, patron saint, or um, an apple, right? But mostly now is every single town, big, small, they have their patron saints. Can be a Madonna, or can be a patron saint, or Jesus Christ, statue or crucifix.
Mm,
And families spend a fortune there,
mm,
organizing a bullfighting, a horse race, um, a lot of folk dances. It can last a week.
mm.
And they spend, and they said, and when they pray, everything I do is just because you deserve, and uh, I'm giving you all this. And then
Mhm,
also I'm asking protection, blessing from my family for it.
mhm,
I know it's people when there are places where people save, work. We always joke, right? Working with travelers, when explain about this, you guys work and save money for traveling. A lot of these people work and save money for these festivals,
mhm. To give back.
right? Yeah, yeah. But in a way, also it's part of faith, part of tradition, right? But it's a lot of drinkings, I always remember the priest, the Catholic priest, always complaining, right? Oh, it's good, everything you do, but no drinking, no excesses, right? But that part is part of the Andes, because celebrations were like that,
Mm,
right? Celebrations were like that. And one thing I think is interesting that, and now I understand more. It's guiding this spiritual, groups,
groups?
and they talk about energy, they talk about connection, and somehow they told me like certain areas have more energy than others, right? And in my curiosity, I asked, how's that you feel that? Because I would like to feel that, guys, as you feel. Uh, one guy explained to me like that might come natural, but sometimes it might take some time. The problem is we're too busy thinking, disconnected, right? Because our lifestyle, whatever, and we don't pay attention. We always are in a rush, right? So let's say you get or you approach to a beautiful place, scenery, let's say a river with the cascades. But if you really don't concentrate and get, you're never gonna be able to feel it. Of course, you're gonna get it said, oh, what a beautiful, but then you're thinking something else, in a problem, in a person, in a place, whatever. How you can really connect, right?
And how
So that
can
was that was interesting to me.
you, like, do you think it's practice?
I think I think one needs to concentrate more, pay attention more on it.
Which means
That's my perspective
more
at least.
silent. No, but it's beautiful. So you have to be more silent.
Well, I take like meditation.
Mhm.
You're not gonna get really to meditate if you don't really, move all the distractors that is getting in your head.
Mhm. True.
And
Absolutely.
then that gets practice.
Mm.
At first, can because you're trying, but it comes. But after time, you'll get it. So once you get it,
Mm.
that is interesting because my job, that's why I like my job, guiding. I get to meet people from different nationalities and different faiths and stuff. And I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot. People that really believe in this kind of energy. I remember when doctor told me like we all have energy. We all can heal. I just listened and said, really? Hmm, how can be that?
Mm.
And I read and everything. And personally, I think it is true. It's just we are blocked by different things. Our childhood, how good and bad it might have been, you know, a lot of distractors, plus what we call the trends, uh, a lot of parents nowadays who said, oh, watch out, don't walk without sandals, right?
Mm.
You're gonna get bacteria, blah, blah, blah. But how is then we live in this world? How then, when is gonna be the time we really connect really with dirt, with rocks,
Mm.
with environment? If we all time will be like protected, like in a bubble. So
Mm.
since we're a child, sometimes our parents don't give us the chance to even touch rocks because said, oh, we can cut our hands or whatever. It's basically more like protection or too much protection.
Mm.
Or don't touch the plants because might be poisonous or might be thorny or whatever, right? So I think this, or from my perspective, all those are like cutting, and yeah, and then we are not able. I guess some people are more because they already born that way, right? I'm completely convinced that some people are more intuitive, and more with those capabilities, to feel, see, or things like that, right? But I think it's like this guy who recommended to read the book also like it's totally everybody is able to do that. I don't know if you had here, like words are powerful. Well, I don't know what's the name of this Japanese guy that made an experiment, you know, water in glasses, something like that. So
And if
every
it,
day waking up, he said it to say, "I love you," right? To one that you were indifferent, but to the other one, he said, "I hate you," right? How you explain that? You know, it's so interesting. So why I'm talking about it is because in the Andes is or the Andean philosophy is related a bit to that, right? And of course, like in all societies, there is, you know, this kind of intrigue, people are jealous or, you know, but in general, for example, in the countryside, in those community villages, I feel like jealous in a way because kids go like 2 kilometers, 3 kilometers, 7, 8 years old children, they go walking to school. I have a daughter. We can do that in the city. And we
ah,
meant to be, but we meant to be civilized.
oh yeah, wow.
But there are more danger in the civilized places than in the countryside. We're meant to be more poor, not much development. But it's very hard that, you know, a girl can be raped over there.
Mhm.
So, and then I'm totally convinced about the values itself as a community. Obviously, as a small, everybody knows each other, but they grew up with different values in general. And well, maybe it's because, again, in the cities, everything is fast, parents don't have time, whatever, right? Um, but over there, for example, I see kids going back and going to school, walking in their sandals. They meet up with a lot of people. Even they don't know you, they say you good morning, good afternoon, right? You pass by a lot of kids in the city, who cares, right? And yeah, one thing I'm kind of worried is a lot of these practices is getting lost, you know, especially this reciprocal system is not working anymore because every time they are getting absorbed by this modern, you know, economic uh, system. Because of course they cannot, because like everywhere, right? These families are looking for better education for their kids, and unfortunately, in the Andes, you know, up in the mountains, far away um, places, and education is very basic, right? And maybe primary school, secondary school, but then they have to move. And when the kids move into the nearest and the biggest, you know, a town, maybe a capital of a district of a province, so they need to pay a rent, and they can do this reciprocal system. So they need money. So every time they say, "Hey, can you help me to work in my, you know, in my crop field or in any duties I'm gonna do?" The other guy immediately say, "Sorry, man, but you better pay me for that day work because I need that money for it."
Mhm.
So every time is getting reduced to be used in specific things, which is the farming. And farming what? Potatoes.
Mhm.
Because there is a season. November, the whole November they dedicate to that and they help each other. That's the only. Some other ones have to pay for that work because for a reciprocity system, they don't have time. But if you say money, oh yeah, they have time. No, it's changing.
Okay.
It's changing. Yeah.
I would love to dive with you because I think especially it's so interesting. Having lived the 3.5 years in Peru, there was a
Mhm.
moment, I think it was in pandemia, and I I remember how many people in a very short period of time reinvented themselves. I mean, of course, they also had to, but then sometimes talking to people in Germany, I kind of felt like everyone felt so helpless, and the whole, especially system here, the social system, supported also the people in a much bigger scale. And then I was thinking, wow, what a capacity Peruvians have, of course, also based on your history and the instability of politics. I don't want to dive into that right now, but to kind of see that um, people just stand up again. Like it's not this thing of like, okay, I'm throwing the towel, and now I have no chance. It's like, okay, then I'm finding a way, and then they do that again in some way in community. Um, and what I was trying to say is more viewing Peruvians as a culture, Peru as a culture. You were mentioning the jungle, you were mentioning the Andes. Could you actually say that there's something like one culture? Like what is typical Peru?
You
I mean,
mean like if it's just one culture?
yeah, I know it's not, but like in this way, or could you say this is, for example, typical Peruvian
As a practice or as a food or in general?
in general?
In
Like
general. Oh,
for example, certain habits, certain ways of communication.
um, well, something that comes to my mind right away is a dish, which of course is is prepared
Dish?
mainly in a dish. Yes, a plate of dish.
A dish, okay, a dish. Like
Yes,
okay, yeah,
food.
food.
Um, it's it's prepared in Corpus Christi in June in Cusco. It's called chiri uchu. Chiri.
Ayuto.
Chiri is cold. Uchu is chili pepper, and it's a dish that comes, with a piece of tortilla, another piece of ham, a piece of cheese, caviar, seaweed, roasted corn. What else? Jerky, sausage. What else missing? Of course, slices of chili pepper, right? And a guinea pig.
Mhm.
And the tradition to eat is in a circle. Otherwise, it said you get full right away.
But you eat it
Somehow it works.
raw or just in Cusco or in
Well,
the end?
actually, it's Cusco, but kind of Cusco in southern part. But I'm talking about as a really traditional and ancestral dish.
Mm.
And the way to eat is cold. There's no way, yeah, you can eat that hot.
Mhm. It's, I think food in general is something people underestimate how important it is for Peruvians. If you would really say something, it's funny, but I couldn't, for example, I couldn't answer you this question either. Like what is typical for Peruvian as like a way how they do certain things, like typical German, some say they are not funny, or we are very straightforward. But one thing is the food. Peruvians love their food, and there is a reason definitively why you can be proud of it. You have such a rich kitchen, which is amazing.
You know,
Influenced by so many, no?
you know what? Now you're talking about food. Um, one guy asked me and said, "Why you guys, the Peruvians, talk a lot about your 3,000 varieties of potatoes and about 200 varieties of corn and varieties of quinoas and varieties?" It's really true. Well, depends. Maybe some exaggerate, but some are really true. But the thing is, look, when you see the Andes, right, in the map, it's not nice. It's very jagged, you know. There's no much space or nice areas. Let's say I would compare like with the pampas of Argentina or the big, extensive flat areas of Europe or the US for farming, where you can use a massive, extensive agriculture. But as it is, you know, a negative way, you know, the Andes geography, it has its positive way. So that positive way explains why we have so many varieties. Because on a flat, you have just one type of climate, one type of temperature. But having this, you have different climates, different type of soil, right? Different ecosystems. So I imagine long, long time ago, right? Whoever, you know, discovered or found, you know, the agriculture and a specific crop, let's say corn, right? This corn was planted and then this other human took to other area, but not at the same elevation. It took a much higher, right? And little by little, these humans distributed the same seed, but started to adapt into these different elevations, different climatic conditions. And after a while, because in Peru, we talk about more than 5,000 years of history. And as the humans, we're talking about more 10,000, 11,000 since the people from the caves, right? Even more, maybe. So it's a long process. And then people started to adapt into different elevations. That's why we talk about varieties. And of course, when people, these groups of people started to specialize, right? Whether it's in farming, so they found that certain places were better for that particular um, type of corn or type of quinoa or type of potato. And the same geography made people, you know, secure the food for the next generations. How come? Look, let's say in a flat, okay? It's just one type. There's no way you can develop into different varieties. Of course, nowadays you can take to life, it's different. But naturally, you can, right? Especially if we talk from a distance of kilometers, right? Miles. Of course, when we talk like equator towards, I don't know, zero, and then we could talk to 90, maybe, yes, horizontally you can develop, but it's much faster vertical, right? I always put example, like the monarch butterflies have to make a journey from Mexico all the way to Canada and come back in about 3 or 4 generations, I think, I'm not sure. But in Peru, they just need to go down to the valley and go up again. Because where they live, right, the condition, right, to have like Canada, they just go up towards the mountain where the glaciers are. And then they go back to the same, which is few kilometers. So that's why we have most of the microclimates in the world, because the presence of these Andes, this rugged, you know, formation of mountains. So that made possible to have. So to finish this topic, people, for example, always cover, you know, the geography vertically, because in the valleys, they cultivate corns and varieties of corns until certain elevation. And then wheat, barley, fava beans, right? But those ones, of course, are not native, were introduced. And then the higher part, they do most of the potatoes. So a climatic change, a weather phenomenon, when it's in the flat, it wipes out. If it comes from that for this elevation, for this temperature, it will pretty much wipe out all of this. But when you have vertical, the, let's say the climatic phenomena doesn't come from for the different temperatures, usually comes from one temperature. So if it wipes out the valley, okay, but then you have the mid and the higher part. If it affects the higher part, doesn't affect the lower. So that's why people, humans, stick in the Andes. Because you say like, okay, geography is not nice. Why then humans decided to do civilizations and stick there? They could have gone further down where the pampas are, or stay more in North America and to build incredible, cities. Didn't happen. So that's why then, through all this time, corn was developed into different varieties of, of this maize or corn that in Quechua we call sara, and potatoes, papas, right? Quinoas and all stuff. So basically, you can grow in the Andes, depending where you are. You can grow anything you want. You just have to find the right spot to grow it. Because the good thing is, and that must happen also in the old times, these old civilizations, some of them established close to the ocean, some of them in the middle of the Andes, other ones close to the Amazon. So there is like valleys connecting the coast, the Amazon. Plus, the same formation in the Peruvian part is amazing because we have deserts like Sahara Desert. It's very dry. Part of the driest desert in the world is in Peru. The rest is in Chile. We have one part of the coast where it rains, which is very north, very little compared to the most of the Peruvian coast. And the other one doesn't rain, never. Only when it happens, these phenomena, but it's not even that strong. But then having a desert, but then we have glacier mountains. How come? We're close to the equator line. We're in the tropical zone of the Earth. So all this also, you know, helps to create all these ecosystems. I'm not exactly sure if it's 114 ecozones in the world, 87 is improved, something like that.
114 and 87, you said.
I think, or it's 117 and 84 or something like that. Ecozones. And then is the Amazon. The Amazon, then once you go from, a lot of people think like Machu Picchu is in a high place. Machu Picchu is even lower than Cusco, It's in the jungle part. And in the jungle part grows a different type of crops. So having all these different ecolocations, I would say, permitted to this old Andean people to access to different type of crops. And then, of course, to the bartering, right? Because again, there was no money, right? Monetary system. So exchange products. So that's why then we have a lot of food like native. I think Peru is one of the hot spots about contribution to the world's food.
Palta.
What's that?
Avocado. Of avocado.
Avocado. Yeah,
Most
avocado palta.
absolutely.
Mhm.
I want to touch two more topics. We are like, whoa. And one topic is, and I don't know how short or how much you can show us of the topic, that maybe people also get a little bit even more deeper understanding about Andean culture, which is the cosmovision. And I know there's a lot to say to the cosmovision, but maybe you can point out like 3 things where you would say this is also something, yeah, maybe we can even, yeah, we can learn also from, wait, I just closed the, oh gosh. Oh. I should have, there is yeah, anyways. So,
Yeah.
because I feel a lot of touch today is not only an understanding about Peruvian culture, but what I found right now in Europe and especially in Germany, people search for their roots. And it's really crazy because I think many people are not aware that being so rootless in a way, I mean, even Germany has been divided in different departments for many, many years. And then later on, it was divided into 2. I mean, the Republic of Germany in itself is very young, actually. Many people are not really aware of that. And to go a little bit further in that, they are like doing a lot of noises out there right now, is that we start to travel and we start to learn, for example, in the Andes, going to Pisac or reading into Mayan cosmology, etc., because I feel there is a deep need to understand or to get back to the roots. And it's through sometimes traveling and understanding other ancient traditions and cultures in order to know there must have been something, or there is a connection also we can have or we have inside. And so I was wondering if there's certain points of the cosmovision you can maybe point out to also give the listeners right now a little bit an idea of maybe how they can connect back to their own roots, and or maybe how they can use the cosmology in the way how yeah, something even applicable in a daily life. I mean, yeah.
Um, Something that it comes to my mind right away is, I think the syncretism, because look, um the way how people see in the Andes, about death in life, for example, is that most of them are the Catholics, right? So basically, under that context, they believe, they die, they go to heaven and stuff. But there's one thing, right? A couple of things actually. When people die, of course, the relatives do all the ceremonies and right for that person, they bury, but then they wash the clothes after 5 days, 7 days, 8 days, or the people after 10 days. I don't know if in Germany it's done that. All the clothes are taken from that person, and usually they take into the rivers and they wash all the clothes, and then they burn. But pieces of those clothes, they cut it and they make a little bags and they fill it up with some grains. Can be corn, can be quinoa, can be um, wheat, and they do a ceremony. Can be simple, can be elaborated too. What I've seen, for example, they do like a little toys, animals toys like horses or donkeys can represent um llamas in the old times maybe, and they put on the back of this animal toy, and they tie. It's like an animal is carrying this food. Other ones just skip the animals, just put all these little bags with all these grains and coca leaves and stuff. But the representation is to deliver this food for that person that had died, right? So what is, what is the context? So when you die, you make a journey. That part is Andean. So it's not just you die, like in a Christian, okay, once you die, now you go to heaven. If you're good. If you're not, maybe you go to hell, or what is the intermediate part? I don't remember right now. But anyways, but not in the Andean philosophy is that you make a journey,
Mhm.
and that journey not necessarily is nice. It can be very difficult, right? That reminds me also a bit to the journey of what is this Roman literature guide? Dante,
Mhm.
no, Dante Alighieri, right?
Mhm.
Like he gets to the mouth of the hell and will make a journey, something like that. But the relatives, that's where it plays a role, right? That's why in the Andes, a poor person is not necessarily the person that doesn't have money. It's the person that doesn't have family,
Mhm.
doesn't have a community,
Mhm.
right? So that's why in the Andes, like, not, I mean, if there are no kids, it's kind of like sad in a way, right? Because it's not just people don't need to have just kids because they need to have kids, because there's a lot of like responsibilities as part of components of the society of their community that has to be continued in the next generations. So let's say someone dies, so the kids, the next generation of the relatives will do the ceremony in order to help your journey, right, to become less difficult, less challenging, because on that journey you will need this food, right? So that's metaphorically, of course.
Mhm.
And then in the Andes also is belief, right? That always you should feed up a dog, no matter if it's yours or not. You gotta be nice to dogs
Mhm.
because you never know. On that journey one day, one of those dogs can help you to cross the bloody river.
Yeah, but not everyone in the Andes is nice to dogs.
What's that?
Said not everyone in the Andes is nice to dogs.
So,
Every other place. Maybe because there's so many, but yeah, I know what
so
you
the,
mean.
the thing is, um, doing all these ceremonies, it's part of responsibility, right, of the relatives, the alive relatives, for the one that had died and can go safe.
Mhm.
That's an interesting perception, right? Because it's not just in like in a Western, I would say Western, right? Um, what we nowadays do, right? You said goodbye, bye bye, and that's it. And
Mhm.
people say, "Oh, I will pray for you," or whatever, right? That's another type of help, right? But these guys now, they need to do some metaphoric, representations that can help you then. Right? That's another one thing that it comes to my mind that still is practiced mostly in the countryside though, right?
Mhm.
And of course, when it comes the day of November, right? The Day of the Dead, people go and place a plate of food for their deads, whatever they like the best. They play music. Every time there's big in the cemeteries, this, of course, again, there's not a judging, a behavior from society anymore as it used to be in the old times. Or the church itself, doesn't have much power, right, to ban this kind of practices as in the old times. And now it's kind of more freedom, I guess. And people do a lot. People go to cemeteries. People play music, drink, right? And that's another thing that is coming back. So, sort of getting back to connect with those old practices.
Mhm.
That's one thing that comes to my mind. And other ones, it depends of areas, because there are other things also that are affecting, I guess, this cosmovision, which are a religion again, which is what is the Protestants, right? I know community villages where entire village is evangelist or Methodist
Mhm.
or Adventist, and that what we're talking at the beginning. Um, Next generation probably will forget about a lot of these Andean traditions
Mhm.
because they're not allowed anymore to do their offerings, right? Or connection with the Mother Earth to when you start, your farming activities or building houses, or the month of um, herding the llamas, the alpacas, in order to do the ceremony for procreation, abundance, protection of these animals. So every time all those practices getting lost on one hand.
Mhm.
So I don't know how it's gonna end up on that way. But on the other hand, in the other areas, is is reinforcing this belief, these practices
Mhm.
because it's important to them. And I guess because also these religions didn't get over there yet, right? That's why I guess it was one of my personal projects, by doing these homestays in a route and working with them in order to revalorate the food ingredients and the practices, like the use of llama, for example, because people don't use llamas. Hardly they use just for transporting the potatoes from where they harvest to home. That's it.
Mhm.
But they don't use as animals of burden as in the old times, for example,
And how does
right?
it affect the llamas?
Um, it does affect in the way that because there are types of llamas,
Mhm.
and people don't pay attention much, on their llamas on on racing separately. It's like horses. If you wanna keep, a type of breed of horse, you need to dedicate to that. Because if
Mhm.
you leave it with the other horses, they will crossbreed, and at the end, you will lose. And that's what happened in most of those areas. We
Mhm.
don't have those llamas, the big ones, right? That carry a lot.
Mhm.
You find only in other areas where still people use them,
Mhm.
right? And because it's not that important, so they just leave it free, and they just gather in the afternoons, and they don't make money with it because if they work in tourism, most of the travel agencies, hire horses, and horses carry more.
Mhm.
But what I
They,
mean is, in the context, like to help to revalorate the use of llama, right? So they have to feel that the llama is valuable.
Mhm.
If they don't feel that, they won't.
Mhm.
So that's why, I developed these tracks using llamas, and also to train llamas, right?
Mhm.
That's another thing. People don't train. For them, it's enough. You just grab and carry. But, there's a beautiful ranches in the US that they have llamas so well trained that you walk in front of the llama and pull the llama. You can go anywhere with the llama.
Mhm.
You try to do with the llamas of locals, no, they will pull you, right? So
Wow.
that's that's the thing, right? So um, what else it can be from their cosmovision?
I would like to stay at that point, because now I also, when I kind of did the little detour of the pandemia, I was also thinking about the philosophy I also learned from you, but I learned from many other Peruvians that
Hmm.
it is possible. And I feel, and you already dived into that, and I think I also would like to finish up with that topic, the topic of Ukumari. And you already were talking a little bit about like re-evaluating and giving more value to the traditions that have been there, and including the locals, and kind of giving the opportunity to everyone to thrive from it. And but I also know what you were telling me, that it was quite challenging to really go with this project. Like you had a lot of struggles with it, and I want you to really like finish up taking us a little bit on the journey of Ukumari, also for the people who always think they don't know, they cannot do anything. Like I hear, especially around here, a lot of people like, what should I do? And it is what it is. And I'm like, I feel you are a big example that this is not true. We can all do a little bit, and it can be in different sectors. But I feel like you also found a way to actually holistically with your project and with your agency to cover a lot of different topics.
Yeah, well, this started actually, well, as I am in the tourism industry, guiding for several years, and also made friends, with locals. I just came an idea because a friend that I met a long time ago on the Inca Trail, he was a porter, and visiting him in his house, it came an idea like to do something, right? And so it came an idea to build like a mini lodges on a route called Ares, and can work with families because behind each of these porters, there's a family of 5, 7, directing the other relatives as big, right? So at first I thought it was going to be easy, but not really. I haven't even finished some of those rooms, But what is gratitude really is like um, the self-esteem, especially of women, has had increased a lot
Mm.
because in those societies in the mountains where mostly men decides, men especially economically, right? And now women can have some money, and it's different. So their self-esteem is better. They can create. They can feel free to create, to do things without asking necessarily to husband and said, "Oh, can I do this?" Right? Or getting some money. So they do textiles. They do little souvenirs for travelers, but also they have learned to cook too. And it's so grateful now. Just recently, for French people went to the route, and this girl told me, oh, they just gave us a lot of greetings about the food. And on the food, for example, I contracted, a guy that could revalorate the ancient ingredients. That's another thing. Mm, in general, my goal was um, to revalorate and protect basically by practicing, not just by saying, hey, you should, like do this or do this or that, right? Because one biggest thing is, and controversial, is about their outfit. A lot of people say, oh, they should keep wearing their outfit, you know, they shouldn't change, they shouldn't. But realistically, the trends are the trends. Then new generations, the young ones, they don't use anymore their outfit, and especially when they move or when they go into bigger cities. So at
Mhm.
the end, in my opinion, is they will use or not, or maybe they will develop, I don't know, um, a rule, I don't know. But the thing is, um, we should teach them, remind them, I would say is the word, that there were very important ingredients, and in terms of food, but in terms of nutrients too,
Wow. Yeah.
right? And because all these uh, globalization trends and everything, unfortunately, they are looking the same as many people are looking in the cities. When they think about preparing meals, are thinking about food in envelopes,
Mhm.
right? What I'm gonna eat? Oh, it has to be rice, it has to be noodles, right? But they have incredible other ingredients. They have quinoa, they have amaranth, they have dehydrated potato. What else they can do with it?
We were eating this pancake. It was
Exactly.
from
It was
what?
from moraya
Right.
and amaranth. And other
Murad.
ones we do pancakes of corn. And the thing is, we use the available ingredients of the areas. If the
Mhm.
area is more in the valley, it's more abundant corn, right? There's
Mhm.
pumpkins. But if
Mhm.
it's much higher, right, over 3,000, 700, so it's more abundant jerky, for example, or dehydrated potatoes,
Mhm.
see, or type of potatoes. Like there's like fingerling potatoes. We do a sort of mousse of that, right?
I think I tried that as well. Yeah. Wow.
So the idea is, well, with this project also, to remind them that with those ingredients, we can do incredible food presentation too. Not
Mm.
just presentation, but also, nutrition. And that is delicious. That has to be delicious too, right?
Mm.
Using alpaca meat, using the lamb, right? It was using chicken. So in the project, because, I mean, as a travel agency, I would have decided just to take everything from Cusco because it's much easier. Just go to a supermarket, a provider, just give a list and they give you and just you take in a car, you start the track, put in a llama, and you take a chef. But the thing is, what is my role, my part as a business, right, with them?
Mm. Mhm.
So as my friend said, I chosen the longest and difficult part. So, but again, it's very rewarding to see all this, um, these things that really, gives you a smile, satisfaction of that is working really. So instead of getting the supplies all from Cusco City, I decided to get supplies from the same families and design, you know, the meals based on what they have and according to the season.
Mhm.
Only the ones are not possible to take, we take from Cusco, like some meat, right? But nowadays, honestly, no one, we don't take nothing. They get supplied the day before, if in terms of meat, right, from the nearest town. But then the rest, like the vegetables, grains, and all stuff, it's from them. If they don't have, they buy from the nearest relative or the neighbor.
Mm.
So what we are doing, we are creating a chain, right?
Mhm.
So the more people will travel, they will need more ingredients, and where they will get from the neighbors. So the neighbors and the relatives will become into suppliers of that family, right? So that's the idea that the money of travelers get end up benefiting, all this little village because the ingredients again are easy to get and everybody has there. And of course, to do this trek, you're not gonna come to Peru and do that trek and have some pasta or pizza right in the middle of the Andes, which ingredients I have to take all from the big cities, right? Maybe I can make a a pizza from dehydrated potato flour.
Absolutely.
It could be right.
Is
Right.
that a recipe
uh,
you're having?
yeah, no, I haven't tried, but now I mentioned that's
Uh,
not ready.
getting
Um,
creative.
but why not? It can be a pizza, but
Absolutely.
with local ingredients, right? I haven't tried it yet, but so in general, is the idea is that I could benefit as a travel agency, but I can give also a big benefit to them, to the families,
Mm.
right? Because taking, for example, tents, I could carry on horses or on llamas. I pick up a place, I set up my tents and my equipment and everything, pay just for, um, not much really for each tent or for camping. And then I go, what I leave, what I teach them, right? What is the sustainable really in a time? Nothing,
True.
right? And the idea is if I one day decide not to run anymore this project, they probably will run themselves because they know already how to cook. They already got the concept that they, in order to prepare a delicious food and a good presentation food, they don't need to get to the big supermarkets and get, these ingredients that they think is the best. Right now they know that they have
Sustains
everything around
itself
them.
without you. I think that's a big, big part. It sustains.
Yes.
If you would be not, maybe not now, but at some point you would be really like, okay, I'm not, I'm out or whatever. But yeah,
Yeah.
it
Now, for example, in one of the houses, they have already greenhouses because it's so high, right?
Mhm,
And one of the problems was that every winter, because it gets frosted, it gets
mhm,
burned. So now it was built a small greenhouse. So now they have the chili peppers there, a lot of spices there. So it's nice, right? We have these herbs, for putting the for tea, for example. So this idea, right? And also on the other hand, is this trekking route is highly cultural, and with cultural immersion in a purpose. Because you not just take a picture, you not just see, observe, you participate on that because they teach you how to. If you want to weave, you know, it's easy to see. There's a lot of documentaries, but try to do some of those, okay? Or
immensely difficult.
try to do, for doing a rope, or try to participate on potato planting with these ancestral tools. That's a different, right? That's a very enriching experience. But on the other hand, what happens? So I'm gonna move this side because the sun is coming to this. Um, um, for them, it's also like to show they feel happy, but they appreciate why they have, knowing that other people like, other people appreciate, so they realize that what they have is valuable.
Mhm.
And sometimes you need that other people, foreign people, appreciate what you have in order that you finally end up, you said, realizing that, oh yes, what we have is really valuable. That happened, for example, with quinoa. Quinoa for years, it was denigrated, still some sectors of society, right? It's more for low class people, countryside people, right? It was always taken like that. But it had to be that, you know, um, top developed countries that take the quinoa and then it comes out in cuisine and magazines and stuff like that. And I said, oh yeah. And then they said, oh, quinoa is from us. Our ancestors grow quinoa. And now, oh, now it's good, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes it needs to happen that. And it's pretty much the same over there. So, and it's revalorating also the practice because some of this practice is already gone. There's no reason to do, like to do a rope for a llama, or a rope just from a llama fiber.
Mm.
And it was said, okay, why am I gonna do this? If not gonna be able to sell it and nothing, why should I do? So if the grandpa dies, maybe the grandchildren doesn't know how to do it, so that know-how will lose.
Mhm. That is when
Right?
the knowledge is kind of, yeah.
So
I
tourism,
I actually uh I also remembered a story where kind of, yeah, that knowledge is getting lost. And if for example the younger generation doesn't really ask, which I think is also a part, that, yeah, as you said, the youth is moving to the cities, and then it's kind of like, why is there even a need to know? And if there's not communication happening or no teaching, then, yeah, then it's a lot of ancestral knowledge that's also going to lose itself. Or you just, you buy a already woven llama halter, and yeah, and again, and then in many ways capitalism comes and just has like a kind of mass production. But
yeah,
yeah, I wanted to say, so I'm super thankful. I think there's so many aspects. I guess we could also do like a second or third episode
no,
together.
no, yeah,
We went into so many different things. So first of all, I want to thank you for your time, for really diving with us into so many different areas of not only what is Peru, but yeah, also ancient traditions. A little bit, you took us back to how you grew up and also your project. What I would love is, do you want to, also I can share, of course, Ukumari. Is there anything else you want me to share with the listeners? Is there something you still have on your heart and you really, yeah, you really need to tell whoever is listening today?
no. My gratitude to you for giving me this space and talk about um my culture, my people, um, and also I think learn too, because talking, we're social animals,
Mm.
and talking always is good. And if we want to learn, we will learn always. So, um, for me, it's an opportunity also to show this the culture that we have, old culture, and also the project. I know there are a lot of topics to talk about it. Hopefully,
Mm.
there's another time we can do that. And
Absolutely. Would love to
and so
welcome second time, and then we can
I would
dive.
say thank you very much. And like in Quechua, we say Tupananchiskama,
Yeah,
which
next
means
time we talk about Quechua.
until,
We talk about Quechua, yes.
yes, Tupananchiskama until we see again each other.
See
Till
again.
we meet up again.
Yes.
There is no really bye. Adios. That's
Adios.
another nice from elder cultures.
And thank you for everyone who is listening today. You can leave us a comment, and of course, you can visit Hukumari. And I hope we kind of opened up also, or we could show our love for Peru, and open you maybe a couple of new perspectives you can ponder about, you can share with others, or maybe you can even try to practice wherever you are in the world. Thank you so much.